All right, I'm shooting this video just to help you remember some basic principles of being in time. I'm going to do a quick review, and then I will shoot 3 other videos that will cover the deficient modes of equipment and when equipment breaks down. So first, what is this a book about? It's a book about being, right? Now, before we can understand and get a handle on the notion of being, we have to reawaken a reason for studying being, right? Not only do we not understand it, but we don't even really care about the question. Philosophers have answered the question of the meaning of being in 3 ways in the past. 1, it's universal, therefore we don't have to worry about being. 2, it's indefinable, so we don't have to worry about being. And 3, it's self-evident, so we don't have to worry about being. Heidegger's response to that in each case is, yes, it is universal, it is indefinable, it is self-evident, but those are reasons why we need to study being, not reasons to dismiss the question. It's what makes it all the more fascinating. So in order to reawaken an interest in the question of the meaning of being, Heidegger first has to discuss what it means to ask a question at all. So there are 3 elements of every question, right? The first is what is asked about. The second, the thing which you interrogate. And the third is that which is to be found out by the asking. So in order to make this question of the meaning of being explicit, Heidegger says we're going to ask about being. We're going to interrogate a certain kind of being known as Dasein. We'll talk more about what Dasein is, but Dasein is that thing which we are interrogating to figure out what it means to be at all. And that which is to be found out by the asking, I think Heidegger began the book thinking we were going to find out the meaning of being. In the end, the book becomes something a little bit more like finding out Dasein's way of being. So we might ask, why Dasein, right? Why ask Dasein the question of the meaning of being? Why not ask, I don't know what, trees or ants or something? Heidegger's response to that is that Dasein has 3 good priorities, right? The first is an ontical priority, and all that means is Dasein is a thing. And Dasein is a thing that is, in this very unique way, the questioning of itself, right? Dasein is in each case a concern or a worry or a care for that which it is. If it ever stops wondering what it isn't Dasein. But Dasein is always and consistently the concern for what it is. That's what it is. That's its ontical priority. Second, it's ontological, and I take that to mean that Dasein doesn't just worry about what sort of thing I am, but it worries about what it is to be a sort of thing that wonders what it is to be, right? And that's ontological. That is, in general, Dasein wonders about its way of being as a way of being, not just as my own way of being. So ontical is that very specific question, what sort of thing am I? Ontological is a more general but similar kind of question, what sort of thing is it to be the sort of thing that is like me, right? It's a little bit more generic. The third is an ontico-ontological priority for Dasein, and that means something like it does science. It wonders about what it is to be something else. Like, what is a star? What is a mind? What is a chunk of matter? What is a rock? What is a bug? All of those things give rise to special sciences. So the ontico-ontological priority of Dasein is that Dasein worries about the being of other entities. And I think in a nutshell, it just means Dasein does science, right? So the real question then, or the real issue of the book is that it's a book about science. It's a book about how science unfolds, about what sort of thing it is that we are, that we can make a science of ourselves, of mankind in general, of other things. And so it's helpful to contrast Heidegger's way of thinking about how to do the science of being and sciences in general. So we know what we're going to study. We're going to study being, and we're going to do it by interrogating Dasein, and we're going to find out Dasein's way of being, right? We're going to ask Dasein because Dasein has ontical priority, it has ontological priority, and it has ontico-ontological priority. And now we got to wonder, how are we going to study Dasein, right? How are we going to interrogate Dasein? Now, all of the sciences are simply ways of interrogating. They're just ways of questioning. And we'll just take as an example of that astronomy, right? So when a scientist does astronomy, they don't actually start as an astronomer anymore, right? There's a system of learning, a system of gaining appreciation for and knowledge of the stars. And so what the scientist does at first is become a student, right? And as a student, the scientist goes to experts, and that's either in the form of books or in the form of professors or teachers who tell them all the things that other people have figured out about stars and general knowledge about star things. But you don't become an expert. That is, you don't become a scientist until you go to the stars themselves. And it works really simply like this. You go to graduate school, you study all the stuff that's out there about the stars, and you find some particular thing that you're most interested in, and you study all the people and all the things about that area of the stars until you reach a point where nobody knows more about stars to help you. But you still have more questions about stars. There isn't anybody who can now fill in that knowledge, so you have to go to the stars. And you devise and implement experiments. But so a scientist eventually reaches the point where they have to go to the things themselves to gain knowledge of what it means to be that thing, right? So you want to know what it means to be a star of a certain sort or to have a certain property. You eventually will have to go to the stars themselves to gain knowledge of that element or that thing. So all the sciences eventually end with this basic notion, to the things themselves. That's what you do when you study things. Now, the question is how? So in sciences, you go to the things themselves, and the how that you do that is you grab a hold of them and you do experiments on them and you figure out how they work and you try to make them tell you. Now, unfortunately, the stars don't answer our questions. It's not like we submit a bunch of questions and the stars decide which ones they want to do and they interview with us and which ones they want to answer. And so you have to devise ways as a scientist to get things to tell you about themselves, given that they don't speak